Welcome to another edition of Mrs. Ginder Teaches Science from her home. I'm going to do 3 little mini lessons this week, one each day, with something new, still kind of sticking with that whole biology theme with living things. But before I start, something exciting is happening out here today. So when we were talking about, and I'm walking backwards to try to get a video of what I'm trying to show you. This is hard to do from this perspective. So you see this tractor right there? They just spread manure in the field yesterday. And they're working it in because it is so stinky. But that was, I thought, a perfect kind of conclusion to what we were talking about yesterday or last week with producers, consumers, and decomposers. So all of that manure is going to go in that field, and decomposers like bacteria are going to break down that manure and return those nutrients to the field before they plant. So I thought that was a cool real life example of what we talked about last week. Today I'm going to focus on consumers. So if you remember from last week, consumers are living things that have to consume food or eat food in order to get their energy. And we are going to talk about how those consumers can now be categorized into 3 different classifications based on what they consume. And you may have heard these words before, but I'm going to break them down with kind of our knowledge of word parts, with our roots, our Greek and Latin roots that we have done a lot with this year. So the first one, I don't have a good way to do this, is this backwards to you guys? I hope not. An herbivore. And that word vor means eater. And the word herb, if you don't know what an herb is, you probably have herbs maybe growing in an herb garden or a regular garden, or if you open your spice cabinet or drawer, you probably have herbs in there like sage and parsley and basil. So this word literally means plant eater. Herb is a plant, and vor means eater. So some consumers are herbivores, meaning they only eat plants. Now, I know a lot of people think of plants, and the only thing they think of is, okay, well, they eat grass or they eat trees because those are plants, right? But plants are everywhere, and so much food comes from plants. So it can be anything that grows on a plant or grows on a tree. And if you think of all the different foods that we get from plants, I grabbed some out of my kitchen. All of these things actually come from plants. Even your favorite right here, the jar of Jolly Ranchers from our classroom, those come from sugar, and sugar comes from a plant called sugar cane. These are pretty obvious, right? So these are products of a plant. So these are considered plants. So animals that would eat those, exclusively plants, would be herbivores. So anything that is a plant or comes from a plant. So my favorite thing, coffee, comes from a plant, comes from a coffee bean off of a plant. Cereal, says right here, is grain, comes from a plant. Bread, even chocolate, some of your favorite things, chocolate, comes from a plant. So it's more than just grass, it's more than just trees. So an herbivore is a plant eater. Another kind of consumer is a carnivore. And I made carn red on purpose. If you know any Spanish or you've ever ordered something from a Mexican restaurant with carne in it, you know that you are getting meat. Carn is meat and vor is eater. So that word literally means a meat eater. So a meat-eating animal or consumer basically eats meat only. So if you think about what meat is, it's anything that comes from an animal. So we eat some meat, right? We eat bacon and sausage and hamburgers and ham and all those different meat products that we eat. Some animals are exclusively meat eaters. They will only eat meat for their main source of diet. So if you think of mainly cats, wild cats, and dogs, those are meat eaters, like tigers, wolves, coyotes, right? There are actually ways that you can determine just by looking at some features of an animal whether they are plant eaters, herbivores, or meat eaters, carnivores. And there are a couple different things that you can look at, and I'm actually going to see if she will cooperate. This is Biddy, and she was just napping on this chair. But I'm going to show you. Come here, Biddy. She is like, what are you doing to me, you crazy person? I'm trying to get you to see those teeth. Open your mouth. I want to see your teeth. Come here. Look at those teeth. Ah! Yeah. Can you guess what kind of consumer she is with those teeth? She is a carnivore. So you can actually look at the teeth of animals, skulls, or just like I did with my cat, to determine what kind of food they eat. I have a picture of a skull here. Take a look at this. Look at those teeth. Let's focus on the teeth right now. See how kind of flat they are? That is a good indication that whatever animal that was an herbivore, because its teeth were flat, designed for chewing on plants, not digging into meat. Because of course, animals, they don't have knives and forks that they're cutting steak into like we do. They have to physically tear that meat and get into that animal somehow. And so their teeth are designed to help them do that. So if you look at this skull, look at those teeth. See how sharp they are? And those front ones are very long and pointed, and then even these back ones are pretty pointed. So that is the skull of a carnivore, because those front teeth are going to allow it to get into whatever animal it has killed to eat, whether it's a rabbit or snake or a deer. It has the ability to tear into that meat in order to eat it. Another thing that you can look at are the placement of the eyes. And you can look at an animal or a skull to kind of figure out if it is an herbivore or carnivore. So if you look back at this skull of this herbivore, you see how the eye sockets are way on the outside, on the very side of the head. And then if you compare that to the skull of this meat eater, the eye socket is right in the front. And there's a reason for that. Herbivores are typically at the bottom of the food chain, and we're going to talk more about that tomorrow. But they are typically grazing and eating plants, and they have predators. They have animals that are trying to kill them and eat them for their food. So the reason that herbivores have their eyes more on the sides of their heads is so they have a better vantage, so they can see for predators who are coming up to them on the side, typically to attack. Whereas carnivores, they're meat eaters, they don't have as many predators, so their eyes are more on the front of their head. Take a look. This is another thing that makes me so sad. So some of you guys know I have birds. I have 3 birds, and this is the week that I would have brought him out to my classroom. Sad. I have a hawk, and I have 2 owls, and we use them to look at some of these features to determine features of herbivores and carnivores, but I had to print a picture today. So this is a picture of a hawk. And there are a lot of different things that you can use to determine what kind of eater it is. If you look at its beak, it's really curved and pointed. And look at its talons, how long and sharp they are. So this guy is obviously a carnivore. It is a meat eater. It's going to use those claws to pick up a small mammal or snake sometimes. and then it's going to use that curved beak to kind of tear into the skin of that animal in order to eat it. There's one more kind of eater, and that is the omnivore. And an omnivore, vor again means eater, and omni means everything. So it is an animal that eats everything. And by everything, I mean plants and animals. And there are a lot of different examples of omnivores like raccoons and possums, and people. People are omnivores for the most part. In the people world, we call herbivores vegetarians. They eat plants only, but for the most part, most people are omnivores. We eat plants, and if you think, ew, I don't like plants, I don't like vegetables, remember, plants are a lot of different things. Omnivores would also eat meat. And if you think about your mouth and your teeth, our teeth, they are designed for us to be omnivores. So if you think of these front teeth, they're a little bit thinner and a little bit sharper and a little more pointed in order for us to bite into and tear at our food. And then if you think of these bigger teeth in the back, they are bigger and thicker and flatter, and those are designed for us to be able to chew it up. So we are designed to be omnivores. So consumers can be divided into three groups. Herbivores, those are our plant eaters. Carnivores are the meat eaters, and omnivores are those everything eaters. And you can use lots of different clues about an animal to figure out what kind of eater it is. If you've ever thought about, well, how do scientists know what dinosaurs ate if all we ever know about them are their bones? That's how. They study those bones, and they look at where the eyes were, and they look at the teeth, and they're able to figure out if that dinosaur was a plant eater or a meat eater. So I hope you enjoyed today's science lesson. I'm going to give you an activity or two to practice about these three different kinds of consumers, and then tomorrow we'll do something new. I hope you have a great day and enjoyed science today. See you soon. Bye.